Today, the sister of one of the Conservative MPs named in newly uncovered government documents about child abuse has told this programme the allegations are balderdash. Our social affairs editor Jackie Long reports.
From the very heart of Westminster, the highest reaches of the establishment, to a children's home in East Belfast, the search for the truth about the abuse of children is proving a long, hard road. Yesterday, government files thought lost, suddenly found in the Cabinet Office marked miscellaneous, relating to allegations of abuse across the UK and over decades. Only brief descriptions of the files were revealed, but these people, all now dead, were named. The former Home Secretary Leon Britton, whose latter years were dogged by allegations of abuse. The former MP for Chester and Parliamentary Secretary to Margaret Thatcher, Sir Peter Morrison. The former diplomat and deputy director of MI6, Sir Peter Hayman. And this man, the former MP for Wokingham and Northern Ireland Minister, Sir William Van Strabenzie.
Part-time I was uniformed.
For former Army Intelligence Officer Colin Wallace, the news that the files still exist was bittersweet. For 40 years, he's been trying to expose what he believes has been a cover-up of child abuse at the Kincora Children's Home in Belfast.
I suppose I feel happy, but also I feel very frustrated because it's something like I told you so. You know, for years I have written to Prime Ministers and Ministers and been fobbed off with answers.
Colin Wallace says he first raised concerns about Sir William Van Strabenzie 40 years ago. This note, written by Colin in 1974, reveals Sir William as what he calls a person of interest, raising the potential for blackmail. Today we spoke to Sir William's 80-year-old sister, Vivian Van Strabenzie. She told us the allegations were absolutely ridiculous. She said he was the most lovely person and that the claims were particularly nasty, as he'd been dead 15 years and wasn't able to defend himself. The new documents have now been passed to the Goddard inquiry into historical sexual abuse. But today the government said abuse at Kincora would be dealt with separately in Northern Ireland. Colin Wallace questions whether any inquiry will ever get to the truth.
How is that after 20, 30 years we are still finding documents that we've been assured in the past no longer exist?
So you're still a little cynical about the process?
After 40 years of this, I'm still very cynical, but I do hope there is a new government in place. I think there's a new public awareness that this actually did happen, whereas 40 years ago people didn't want to believe it. And I think just that public awareness is really good because it may be, hopefully, that the government will decide to really open the filing cabinet.
Finding out exactly what happened here at Kincora and throughout children's homes and institutions across the UK will depend on finding all the files and papers which have lain ignored or hidden for decades.
Jackie Long.
So let's move on to the Independent. Officials to open Whitehall's Chamber of Secrets. These are deemed as papers that are too hot to handle, which could be a lot of fun to read.
Well, the real shocker, of course, is obviously the references to the child abuse, the historic child abuse cases which have come to light this week, that were in a stash of documents that hadn't been sorted or kept in any kind of order. So the problem came about because when the investigation into child abuse allegations was looking for file names, none of these files came up because they were in some room somewhere and nobody had sorted them out for years and years. What's really awful about it is that the government knew that this stash of documents was there, and they knew that it needed to be sorted out, and they knew that somebody needed to go through and catalogue them. And obviously now we've got to the point where it's all come out that actually there were some names in there that were related to child abuse, possible child abuse scandals, and it's all come out a little bit too late, really.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that intrigues me is whether, because this is sort of notebooks and sort of personal items, essentially, that were from the desks, essentially, when they were cleared off of top Whitehall officials, and whether we'd have that same stuff saved today. So, everything in those would probably be on email now, everything would be online, and whether we'd back them up or whether they'd just get deleted or people would try and avoid ways of releasing them under the FOI Act, I'm not sure that if there were similar things today, at least in some ways there are paper records around that we can go back through and see what they were talking about in the 80s.
So you think it'll be more difficult to dig out files like this in decades
I mean,
to come?
people wrote what we'd now put in a text message between two private mobile phones. You used to write on a sort of piece of paper on a memo and then get your secretary to type up and then send it across Whitehall, where it'd be double copied and then stored away. Those sort of records just won't be as easy to recover for future decades. So, especially because of freedom of information laws, Whitehall officials are pretty good at making sure stuff doesn't end up being archived in the same way.
And we could wait quite a while, couldn't we? Such as the scale and sensitivity of the records, that a team of civil servants has been given until 2020 to catalogue the files and assess whether the material can be published, says the Independent. So we've still got a bit of a wait.
Yeah, and I think a big question here is actually, is this a case of, so, all right, it's not great if you don't keep your documents in order, but is there a bigger point here? Are we talking about documents that actually people willfully put into an uncategorised collection of information because they knew that there was information in there that could be harmful? I mean, that seems to be what's emerging at the moment, but that's a much bigger question that I think we need to have answered.